just like every other place you work. Not every employee is a good one. Sometimes there's some real stinkers that get through the process. Here's a few that I used to deal with. Most of the cast members and people working at theme parks are there to help everybody. They're there to have a good time and to help everybody else have a good time. But like any other place, there's a few that kind of miss the point and you wonder why on earth they're there. They just kind of leave you confused about how they got through the screening process or why they even sought after a job at the theme park. Disney and Silver Dollar City and Busch are certainly no exceptions. There were more than a couple cast members that we would watch and they would never be happy. You'd wonder how on earth you could be at Disney and just not be happy. We had one guy that had come over from Universal. He had apparently worked with some of the characters at Universal, and he was a Universal guy through the core. And I never quite understood why he left Universal when he loved it so much and came to Disney, because nothing about Disney was good. He didn't like the pay. He didn't like the job. He didn't like the characters. He didn't like how they did things. He didn't like this and didn't like that. And it was always Universal is so much better. And he was there for over a year. It was like, dude, why are you here? Go back to Universal. We're tired of it. I actually got along with him well enough, but you just got sick and tired of hearing about the other company. You're not there anymore. You're here. Either like this or go away. We would have a few others that would get through the training sessions and just not get the job. Not understand why they were doing what they were doing. We would have certain standards that we were supposed to hit, certain things that we were supposed to do as a photographer. One of the things was that we were supposed to take a certain minimum number of pictures. If you're out on the street, you're supposed to get a very nice vertical shot with the icon like the castle behind it, a horizontal close-up, and then one or two fun pictures. If you're with the characters, same kind of thing. You got to get the vertical showing everything, the horizontal close-up, and then you'd have certain candidates that you were supposed to take, at least 2 or 3 of each one. So every photo session should have at a minimum 3 pictures. Typically 5 or 6 was a normal thing. We had some photographers that just didn't get that. If they're out on the street, they'd shoot 2. 1 vertical, 1 horizontal, and they wouldn't do anything else. If they were with the characters, they'd shoot 2 and nothing else. And you kind of look at them going, hello, do you understand? They wouldn't take candids. They wouldn't take fun pictures. You know, a couple of them, we kind of joked that they must have come from Kodak, who used to do the pictures, because it was this hounding thing. It's like, dude, you're not going to make any more money if you shoot more pictures. You're not going to make any more money if you get more different families. It just make them happy and good and get what they want. They were the minority. They were rare, but there were a few. Especially for me, that was really aggravating. Especially when I would run into one when I was in the park with my family. I always approached my job as a photographer that for that family that was with the character or that was in front of me, I was the adopted dad in my mind. If this was my family and they were visiting the park, what pictures do I want? What pictures do I want to see? What would I take if they were my family? And that's how I would shoot. That's what I would take. I understand, people who didn't have family, who were single, that they might not understand that mentality. But to deliberately not take pictures because you didn't want to, you're in the wrong job, bud. I can remember one photographer that was at Magic Kingdom. You've got guidelines in your camera. If you've ever used a DSLR, it's got a little grid in there that you can use to help take your pictures and make sure that your pictures are straight. Some photographers never got that. One of the things with the castle is you had to make sure the castle was straight. Now, if you look at the castle, it's built a little bit weird, so it's almost kind of this weird angle peak thing, so it's kind of off-center. But you put the lines on the center of it and line it up, and it should look good. We'd have people whose castles would be this direction. Or this. How do you get a crooked castle? Hello? Some of the weird pictures, you'd have people that would turn their autofocus off. Why? You'd have some photographers that thought they were really good photographers when they really knew nothing. One of our rules was we had certain settings that we had to stick with. Each position had its own settings, and you set your camera for that, and you left it at that. That way you couldn't mess it up. We had some that thought they knew better than that, and they would mess it up. Why? It was inconceivable, some of the stuff they came up with. Just do what you're supposed to. And then there were the character attendants sometimes. When we first started in Photopass, Photopass was new for many of the parks. And so as we were expanding, the characters and the attendants were getting used to us a little bit. Most of them didn't have a problem. 95% we came in, and for them it was a wonderful thing because we come in, we try to help, we're there to assist, we became part of a team, and most of them loved it. Got along great with almost everybody. We did have one character attendant though at Toontown that was a pain in the neck. This lady had decided she did not like Photopass, she didn't like photographers, and she was going to do everything she could to mess our stuff up. We would be taking pictures and she would step in front of the camera. We would be trying to get pictures of the families as they're getting autographs and she would step into the middle. And our rule is you can't take a picture of a cast member in costume. Just one of the rules we had. She'd make sure she'd get into the middle of it so we couldn't take the picture. You're not part of the family. Get out of the way. Had to make herself the center of everything. She would deliberately tell people to look away from our camera if we're trying to take a picture. Just a pain in the neck. I mean, I actually had her argue with me a couple times as I'm trying to take a picture and she'd yell, "You can't take that picture!" Excuse me? First off, you're distracting. Second, you're annoying. Third, yes, I can. Fourth, stop ruining their moment. We finally ended up having to call management, and management had to deal with her several times before she disappeared one day. I don't know if they reassigned her or what, but most of us who worked at Toontown really didn't miss her when she finally left. I can remember one other rather interesting employee interaction. I was sitting in the break room that was underneath Character Spot at Epcot. Now, if you don't know, there is a small utilidor section underneath Epcot's fountain and the whole Innoventions and Character Spot area. There's a break room right down there, and I'm sitting there relaxing one time, and there's a couple custodial workers having lunch. And as I'm sitting there, another custodial worker walks in, goes over to the fridge that's in there, opens it up, and starts yelling. Okay, this is kind of weird. What's he yelling about? "Where's my lunch? Who took my lunch? I had a lunch." And as he's yelling, he turns around, he walks out, and realizes that one of those custodians that's sitting there is eating his lunch. Why would you take somebody else's lunch from the fridge? So my lunch break was the pleasure of watching these two get into an argument and fight over the fact that this one custodian stole his lunch. When asked why, well, it looked better than what I had, but you can have my lunch. Really? They actually had to call a manager to come down and take them both off because the one who lost his lunch was about to lose his mind and go ballistic on the other two. Not a real good situation. So yeah, sometimes you get some winners. The one other issue that we would rarely have at Photopass was with managers. Every job you got to deal with managers, and it seems like there's always a couple that skip in that shouldn't be there. Most of our managers at Photopass were great. We actually had a number of them that actually started off as photographers like me and worked their way up into the management spots. So they knew what we were going through, they understood what we were doing. We did eventually merge with entertainment though, and we had a couple managers come into our department that had never been photographers, never worked with photographers, and didn't have a clue. Part of their job as managers was once a month they were supposed to get on the camera gear and the outfits and go out as a photographer in the park so that way they knew where we were coming from. They got to experience what we did, and they'd be a better manager for it. We had a couple that they found every excuse in the world not to use their photo day. They may get sick. They may end up having something else come up. They would go do something, but they wouldn't do their photo day. Gee, is it any wonder that they weren't real respected as managers either? They also tended to be the ones that like to stay in their air-conditioned office instead of getting out in the park, or not get out with the photographers and talk to them and see them. Yeah, we had a couple like that. Thankfully, in every single one of those cases, problem employees, they were rare. We didn't have to hang around them very much. I enjoyed the fact that as a Photopass photographer, there was a lot of ways I was independent. I might be working with a character, I might be working with an attendant, but I also may be working by myself for quite a while. I was doing my own thing and it was just me and the guests. So I didn't have to deal with the other troublemakers too much. And really, even if I was working with others, we really didn't have to deal with troublemakers that often at all. You were able then to put them out of your mind and focus on the guests and the customers. And that's what the fun part of the job really was. Like any other place though, every place has their trouble employees. Every place has their trouble manager. Theme parks aren't any different. If you think you're going to go to a theme park and everything's perfect, keep dreaming. There ain't a perfect place out there because there's imperfect people everywhere. Hope you enjoyed this little look at the parks and what it was like to work at them. Thanks so much for watching.